Guys, this bumper came out phenomenal. Okay, we'll get onto this bumper today. A job like this, repairing that crack in the bumper and then prepping it, sanding it, prepping it, and then painting it and clear coating it. This is going to take probably 6 hours, most of the day. The plastic repair itself, probably an hour or less. So the paint coat is on your rad support, upper rad support. There's a tag here, and it's these bottom numbers. So mine is 744. First we have to fix this crack on the bottom. Somebody already did a farmer fix on it, which is good. I'm actually gonna add one more of these zip ties over here, but that's only for the purposes of mending this. Okay, zip ties come out later on the second pass through with the epoxy. Alright, I took the fog lights out already. And then once we have this glued, we will move on to refinishing the actual bumper, prepping it and finishing it. So you can see the crack is right there. I'll show you how to mend it. My battery is dying, so I need to make this quick. And then I will put another zip tie in here to make sure that there's no gap left. And then we'll weld it, epoxy it, take the zip ties out and do it again. Remove the grease and wax, clean this up a little bit. .80 grit paper. I replaced these zip ties with fresh ones, made them tighter, so there's almost no gap left in here now. Prep is important. You want this stuff to stick, the epoxy to stick properly to this. Now we're going to use a heat source to blend both these plastics together and kind of create a groove for the first layer of epoxy to sit in nicely. And then also fiberglass blanket. I already cut out a piece, so we'll lay it in here like so, but that's a little later. For now, let's do the heat. So I've got a high power soldering iron with a flat bit. There's tools you can use for this. I don't have them, I don't do enough of this. This works just fine. You just kind of want to blend the plastic together so it kind of has some adherence on its own before we start applying the epoxy to it. See, now this stuff almost sticks on its own, and we've also created a nice groove and some points where the epoxy will really stick. I'm using this stuff Works really well. Also, what you want to use on these soft plastics is an adhesion promoter of some sort. Spray this down. And then we'll have about 10 minutes this just softens the plastic up and gets rid of that mold release stuff that they use in these bumpers. Two equal parts. This stuff really works great. This is a permanent repair. This will not crack after it's completely finished. Now we will apply this fiberglass. And then we will mix up more and lay it over top of this stuff. Kind of a messy job working with this fiberglass stuff because the fiber is going to come apart. But trust me, after this is done, it'll be perfect. I don't want to cover my zip ties because I want to cut them off later so I don't have this nub sticking out. So after I had the fiberglass blanket on, my battery died. So I just spread it all. After the blanket was down, I mixed another batch, as you saw, and I spread it all and then I smoothed it out with my finger. Now we just wait till it dries and should be good to go. We'll go on to about half an hour, 45 minutes. This stuff dries super fast. So we'll flip this bumper around, we'll start working on it. This is awesome. And the nice thing about this is it's flexible, so you know, it'll bend with the bumper and it won't crack under stress. She ain't going anywhere. It's good. So the zip ties will come off. We'll use 80 grit on this again. Smooth it out. Get under the paint. And then we'll reapply this bumper repair compound epoxy onto this side as well. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this is perfectly smooth. And then we'll fill it. See how nice this came in? So the zip tie is a big trick here. Bit of a ridge here, but that can be sanded down. And okay, so I got it scuffed down. We'll wash it down with grease and wax remover, and we'll mix up some more of this bumper repair epoxy, and we'll apply it just like we would body work. We'll wait half an hour. While we wait for it to dry, we will start sanding down this bumper. So this bumper, see all of the rock chips, they're not right through. They're going, you know, it's just the first layer of paint. So what we want to do is we want to smooth all this out as much as possible, basically get rid of all of them. Chances are we'll get down to the base layer or the primer layer, and then we'll reprime this again and do this a few times, wet sand it until we get it perfect. Important thing here is not to use your hand. You gotta use a block for this. Make sure you don't get any low spots, and then this thing is gonna be waving at you every time you look at it in the parking lot. Filler applied. This applies just like body work. The body filler. We have to do 2 more applications after we sand this down when it dries. Now we'll move on to sanding this bumper down. So what we want to do is we want to take the clear coat layer and maybe the base layer off. We have to see how this looks. See, you can still see a lot of the rock chips, so we need to basically get rid of all those rock chips. I really don't want to go all the way down to the plastic. So using a block, nice long even strokes, don't rush it. You don't want to create any gouges in this. It's going to be super smooth. And once we get down to this layer, this is an 80 grit paper. We'll switch paper to like a 120, then a 240, and then a 400. As I said, I don't want to get down too low. See, so over here, the chips are basically already disappearing compared to here, see? Okay, we got most of the flat surfaces sanded down. You can see here, there's actually a low spot here. So that's why you always want to use a block and do long strokes. Now all of this in between stuff has to be done by hand with your finger. Kind of a time-consuming bullshit job, but it is what it is. Same in here. I've already sanded down the epoxy. We gotta load it up. Another coat here. See, if you use a block, it kind of shows you the low spots. The high spots will get sanded down, the low spots will stay. I'm not gonna show you guys or teach you how to do body work. There's plenty of videos on YouTube on that. But that's kind of the gist of it. See right here, we got a low spot. This has to be filled in because this is smooth, and this part did not get sanded down right in here. Okay, so 3 hours later, this bumper is basically all stripped and ready for primer. Well, almost. I gotta go through the whole thing right now with the 240 grit paper, smooth everything out, and then we'll sand or prime it. This was the biggest pain in the butt. See, I still have a little few of these left. If you don't feather these, you're gonna end up with ridges and they're gonna be visible. So at the very least, you either need to feather them or preferably take that paint right off. This is looking good. I'm gonna have to put some spotting putty after I finish sanding this. This is not yet sanded 100%. Ready? We're gonna wipe her down with final wipe, and then we are going to prime it. High build primer. I love this stuff because it'll cover 240 grit paper if you lay a couple coats on. So then you don't have to use a lot of glazing putty. So yeah, I went over this whole thing with 240, and I also taped these chrome pieces. I'm gonna wipe it down and start spraying. 2 lighter coats, better than 1 heavy one. Let it flash off. And spray it one more time. Okay, all primed up. Where the repair was. Now we'll go for dinner. By the time we get back, it should be ready for wet sanding. Remember how I said 2 light coats better than 1 heavy coat? That's okay, no big deal. Just primer, we'll wet sand it off anyway. Mention, guys, cover your stuff when you're doing any kind of painting. Unless you got a spray booth. Came back about half an hour. This stuff is all dry. So we're gonna start wet sanding. We'll use 600 grit paper. And a block in the areas that we can, obviously, and we'll go to town. So I got a little spot here where the repair was done. So we will use the spotting putty, and then after that we'll wet sand it again in that one spot. Should be good to go. The rest of it will dry nicely and we'll move on to something else. I gotta start prepping these road rash fenders and stuff for blending. I've recoated, sanded and recoated this little spot that was repaired. I gotta still put a couple coats of primer on it, then we'll wet sand it. This, we just want to blend this out and just fix this one little tiny area here. See, there's actually no rust. The rust hasn't started yet. It's just surface oxidation, like surface rust. So we will take all this down with 240 grit. Then we'll blend it out with 400 grit, 600 grit. And then we'll blend this out. Obviously all of this will have to get painted. So I think after we do 400, we'll prime it with that same type of primer, just to fill any little imperfections. And we'll do this on the rear corners as well. So I got a bit of a problem here because I don't really want to remove this bumper just for this one little spot. As you can see, this is all surface rust. So once I get rid of this, all the way down, so there's no brown or nothing showing, then I will prime it or putty it, sand it, prime it, and then I think what I'm gonna do is actually pull this bumper out. I can actually do that, so I can get underneath here and do the same thing, so I can coat everything with paint when I go to paint it. So I think that's gonna be the plan there. Okay guys, so I got all these spots done with 120, 240. So 120 I got the rough stuff off, and then 240 I blended it out or feathered it out a little bit. And now I'm gonna go over with 400 grit. And then 400 grit, I'm gonna feather it out into a little bit further into the fresh paint, and then we'll primer it and wet sand it. It's important to do it like this because we're just doing a blend or a spot repair. So we're gonna have to blend this in to the old clear coat I missed a spot here. I gotta do the same thing as I did on the other side. But yeah, that's the gist of it. 120, 240, 400. And then we're gonna tape all this off and just primer the sections that we sanded. And then, I got another spot here, shit. And then, I'm gonna take the tape off, wet sand it. It's important to do the 400 grit a little bit further into the paint to feather it out like that, because we're not gonna tape any of this, right? When we go to primer it, we'll just we'll tape off only the sections that we sanded, and then we'll take the tape off and we'll wet sand a whole area, and then we'll blend that in with our paint and clear coat. Prime this, let it dry, wet sand it, and then feather it out while we're wet sanding it with 600 grit or 800 grit paper. And then all of this stuff is just gonna get feathered out with 600 or 800 grit, wet sand it, and that's gonna be all. Already dry, we'll take the tape off and we'll start wet sanding all of these areas. Okay, this is what that looks like when it's dry. Now when we go to wet sand this, obviously we'll feather this in nicely, but then we want to make a nice uniform area for the clear coat to stick afterwards. So when you're wet sanding, make sure you leave yourself a nice area where you can have where you can see your blend line later on when you're painting. Same with this. We'll go all the way out to here, and then when we spray the actual base, we'll cover the spots that need to be covered, and then the clear will go a little bit further, and then we'll fade this out here. Hey guys, so if you can see here how far I went with my wet sanding. So that's going to be our blend line. Kind of hard to see with this light. So now when we go to tape, we're just going to tape here, the door. None of this will get taped, so make sure this is nice, super clean, because you want to be able to, when you're spraying the clear coat, blend it out, cover this wet sanded area, and then we're gonna spray some blending solvent right there. So then when we go to power polish it, all of this will get wet sanded. So make sure this is super clean so you don't get any overspray, any crap stuck under your clear coat, because you're always gonna get some overspray here from the clear coat. Okay, so I got everything taped up. We'll do a final wipe on this. We'll start painting. As you can see here, I'm only taped up the chrome. The rest will just be blended out. Painting today, I'm just gonna do the base. Might be able to clear it, but I only got one can pre-mixed of this stuff. This is a silver, brilliant silver, 744 code, as I shown earlier in the video, but there's 3 different shades of this color, so I never had a sample, so I just kind of pick one to see if this blends. If it doesn't blend, then we'll have to take a sample in maybe like a gas cup or something and get this remixed. I'll need at least 2 of these cans for the bumper, and then 1 can for the rest of this. Okay, so we'll start spraying. Remember, we're only covering the area that was sanded and then 240 sanded up to here somewhere. The rest wet sanded stuff is gonna get clear coat. It's hard to do unless you have a nice spray gun, because this is quite a wide pattern on these. So you always end up with a bunch of overspray. But anyway, one thing I almost forgot, spray my adhesion promoter. Anytime you do a bumper, plastic, anything, spray this beforehand and then let it flash off for 10 minutes. I had to repaint the whole bumper once because the mold release agents or whatever they call them inside some of these plastic bumpers, they basically act like oil almost when you try to paint over them. Make sure that mold release stuff is dried up. Remember, you're just covering the stuff that you went really deep on. Looks like our paint is basically a perfect match, so I got lucky. All right, guys, turning out really good with the base. We're gonna wait for it to flash off. Flash off meaning if it's shiny, it's still wet, right? Base should be dull. So we'll wait for it to dull up and dry out. And then we'll clear it. It came out pretty good, especially in a spot like this, for instance. As you can see, I didn't go far enough. I want that dull sanded surface for my clear coat to stick nicely. Okay, well now we sit and wait and drink beer. I should mention, I did 3 coats on this. The coverage is not very good on this paint. Actually, in some spots I did 4 coats. And I just wait for it to kind of, you know, flash off, dry out a little bit in between coats. That's it. Don't keep spraying. You don't want any runs. So wait for it to flash off, probably 5 minutes between coats. Found out I only have 1K acrylic clear coat on hand. So we're just gonna do a little test spot here on this front section. But I think tomorrow we're gonna go and get proper 2K stuff. It's much better and stronger in the long term. So I might just do this little section here in the front just to see how it all blends out. Yeah, I use 2K. 2K is basically a 2-part. There's a little activator on the bottom that activates it, and you've got a few hours to use it. And also I'm using the small nozzle, not the large nozzle for this job anyway, because I'm blending. I also sprayed the bumper here. Once I start clear coating the bumper, I'll be using the wide nozzle. There's 2 nozzles that come with these, especially from this company here. So I sprayed the tough to reach areas. First coat on the bumper. She looks really good, guys. You can see this is where the fixed area was. There's a little tiny thingy there, and that's about it. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now this is the tricky part, clear coating this. Now I wouldn't worry too much if you're trying to blend this. I wouldn't worry too much about orange peel. So basically what I'm saying is don't try and lay it on too thick to get a nice shiny finish right off the get-go. You can always power polish that stuff out later. What you want to avoid is runs, right? So let's try this. So the first coat is always kind of a tack coat. Here we go a little bit further now with the clear coat. And just like that. And then we'll do a couple coats on this, and then we'll spray the solvent. Okay guys, so I got 3 coats on this. It's tough to see, but you will see a line right there. Worst light for this. Daylight's the best. See right there is where our blend line is, and that's where we're gonna do a quick spray of solvent. But overall, she looks pretty good. I got no orange peel on it. The paint matched perfectly. This is your magic stuff. Don't wait for the clear coat to flash off. As soon as you're done spraying your last coat, 30 seconds a minute, going with this, and you gotta be really, really careful. Don't spray too much of this. 2 very gentle coats on the blend area. So what does that mean, the blend area? Between the fresh paint and the old paint, you're spraying 2 very gentle coats of this. I'll show you. I hate doing this part. That's it. Then we wait just a little bit and we'll put a second coat on it. So this is even trickier because I'm gonna put the actual camera down and spray this. Okay guys, fade away is gonna do its magic. All this is gonna flash off altogether tonight. Tomorrow we'll get the 2K stuff and we'll do the bumper on the other side. It kind of sucks I'm using 2 different clear coats, but and then we'll wait for it to dry properly, couple days, and we'll power polish the sucker. Oh, I gotta run. Shit. Okay guys, I'm painting the bumper finally. I finished the other side of the car today. I got more clear coat. I actually got single stage clear coat 1K, just so I can have uniformity between on the car itself. For the bumper we got 2K clear coat with the activator in it. So I'm probably 2 coats in right now. Still got at least 2 coats left. The coverage is not very good on this. Okay guys, so I'm done painting the bumper. We're gonna get onto the clear coating. Biggest issue you're gonna have with the clear coat is that this is the clear coat I'm using. It's upside down because I'm using the rear camera, but it's got an activator on the bottom. There's a little thing. Pop this on the bottom, hit it hard, and then start mixing it, and then you've only got a few hours to use this. Biggest issue with any rattle can that you're going to be using is when you're painting flat surfaces, you want to make sure that you start with a fresh can, right? So always start with the flat surfaces first. Otherwise, you're going to start getting spatter when the can starts to run dry. Right? Right. Okay, so I got my first coat applied. First coat is fairly quick. Apply it pretty dry. At least I always do. And then you have a nice tack coat for the clear coat to stick to as you're moving along. Bumper looks really good, by the way. I lifted it up because I'm gonna have a hard time trying to get a nice finish. I got spatter even when I tried to paint this flat with a full can, so I lifted it up a little bit so I can get a more diagonal paint application. But yeah, so now the next coat, I'm just waiting for it to flash off here, 2, 3, 4 minutes. And then next coat is gonna be a wet coat. And then we're gonna put another coat after that. This bumper came out phenomenal. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't achieve proper results with a rattle can. Very, very minimal orange peel in a couple places. I didn't want to overdo it. When you're applying this wet coat, very steady hand, nice slow speed to get the shine that you want. If you go too slow, you're gonna get runs, you're gonna have too much. If you go too fast, you're gonna get orange peel and dry spots. Yeah, this came out beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. This is the repair area, by the way. I'm very happy with this. All right. Taking the tape off. I think that's everybody's favorite part, right? You get to see the results of your labor. The blend came in beautiful. I don't even have to hardly power polish this or wet sand it. Looking good, guys.